The address was 4782 Brookfield Lane. It was one of those cookie-cutter suburban streets, where every house looked the same. I'd been doing DoorDash for 8 months by then and knew the neighborhood like the back of my hand. Brookfield was always easy. People mostly tipped well and left their porch lights on. It was maybe 10:15 when I pulled up. The house had warm yellow lights glowing in the windows and a wreath on the door. Everything seemed routine for a late-night Tuesday delivery. I grabbed the bag and headed up the walkway. A woman who looked to be in her mid-30s answered the door. She was wearing faded jeans and a blue cardigan, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had a tired mom smile. "2 large pizzas, breadsticks, and a Coke, ma'am." She nodded and handed me 2 20s before I even said the total. The order was $23. "Oh, let me get you some change."
Keep it.
She hissed. $17 tip on a Tuesday for pizza. I probably thanked her 3 times. I was turning to leave when she stopped me.
Hold up. Let me check the bag. Don't go till I come back.
I nodded as she stepped inside. She had left the door cracked open about 6 inches, so I could see into her hallway. There were family photos on the walls, and the carpet was beige and extremely dirty. When 5 minutes passed and she didn't show up, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. Suddenly, voices started whispering from somewhere inside the house. I crept closer and could hear footsteps moving deeper into the house. The woman was talking to someone. The tone was low and intense. I couldn't make out words, but she sounded upset. As the conversation got louder, I shifted uncomfortably, trying to remember if I had spotted anyone when she'd answered the door. I was sure the house had seemed empty, but now there were definitely 2 voices going back and forth, hers and someone else's, probably a guy. I thought about just leaving. I had my tip, the order was done, but something made me stay there. It was curiosity or maybe that weird gut feeling when something doesn't add up. Suddenly, the voices stopped and footsteps came back toward the front door. The door opened wider and the lady peeked out. She stared at me, but her whole face had changed. The smile was gone. Her expression had gone completely blank. She looked at me, then past me and at my car parked at the curb, then back at my face, like she was trying to work something out. Then she frowned and said,
Why are you still alive?
My blood ran cold. She had to be kidding, but she looked genuinely confused. My brain froze. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The woman just kept staring at me with that blank expression, waiting for an answer I didn't have. Before I could say anything, she stepped back and slammed the door shut. I heard the deadbolt slide into place and the chain lock while I stood there like an idiot, trying to make sense of what just happened. Through the window next to the door, I watched the lights start going off one after another. The front room fell dark first, followed by the hallway, then the kitchen in the back. It kept going until the whole house went dark and silent, as if nobody had been there at all. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The DoorDash app showed the order as completed. The delivery was rated 5 stars with a $17 tip confirmed. Everything looked totally normal on my screen. But I was standing on a dark porch with my hands shaking, and I couldn't stop hearing her voice asking why I was still alive. I walked back to my car, got in, locked all the doors, and sat there staring at the dark house for a solid minute. I looked down at my hand, the 2 20s still clenched in my fist, wrinkled and damp with sweat. She'd tipped me before I even gave her the food. Most people tip through the app, or they tip after they get their food. But she'd pulled out cash immediately, like the money had been sitting there ready. I started the car and drove away. I only made it about 2 blocks before I had to pull over because my hands were shaking too hard to steer. When I got home, I called DoorDash support and told the guy something weird had happened on my last delivery. He advised me to report it through the app before he hung up. I drove past that house 3 times over the next week. Couldn't help myself. Every time it looked the same. The lights were on, there were cars in the driveway, and the wreath was still hanging on the door. But I kept thinking about the voices I'd heard, about whomever she'd been talking to, whom I never saw, and the way she'd looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be standing there, alive. I'm 25 now, and I still deliver food, just with a different app. I've probably done 2,000 orders since that night, but I never went back to Brookfield Lane. And whenever I get a delivery to a quiet street with nice houses and warm lights in the windows, my chest tightens up. I check the address 3 times, just to make sure it's not 4782. Because I still don't know what she expected to find when she opened the door the second time. But I know I should be grateful I wasn't that. I'd been delivering pizzas for Marco's for 6 months, and I'd learned which neighborhoods to avoid after dark. This one was borderline, but it was just past 9 p.m. and the house looked normal enough. It was a single-story cottage with pale yellow siding and a porch light on. Newspapers were piling up by the steps, but nothing particularly screamed danger. I grabbed the pizza and headed up the cracked walkway, humming under my breath. The man answered before I even rang the doorbell, as if he'd been waiting right there behind the door. He was maybe 50, wearing a stained undershirt and sweatpants. He had thinning gray hair and his thick glasses magnified his eyes. He smiled when he saw me, but it was too wide and eager.
1 large pepperoni.
I said, holding out the box.
That'll be $18.50.
Instead of taking the pizza like a normal person, the guy just stood there, staring at me. His eyes traveled down from my face to my chest. I was wearing my work polo and jeans, but the way he looked at me made me feel like I was naked. "You're pretty," he whistled. "And how old might you be?"
Thanks. 18.50, sir?
"No, really? How old?" He leaned against the doorframe, stepping so close I could smell his nasty breath. "You look young. 20? 21? He chuckled, flashing his bare teeth. The braces made me gag. They were yellowish, with patches of something green and red between them.
22.
I shifted the pizza box, trying to create some space between us. The porch suddenly felt way too narrow.
Sir, I need to get back. Other deliveries are waiting.
"You got a boyfriend?" My heartbeat picked up.
Sir?
"It's just a question." His smile stayed fixed, but his tone had an edge. "You live around here?"
No. Can I have the payment, please?
He finally reached for his wallet, but his eyes never left me. "Those jeans fit you perfectly, you know. You should wear things like that more often. Shows off your curves pretty well." My skin crawled. I tried to laugh it off to make it less weird.
Thanks. If you just...
"You live alone?" He pulled out a 20, but held on to it when I reached for it. "Got roommates or family?"
I live with people.
It was a lie, but I didn't feel like sharing anything about myself.
Sir, I really need to go.
I emphasized. He nodded and started counting